Welcome and thank you for joining us to talk Zero Trust with Microsoft Endpoint Manager. My name is Matt Shadbold. I'm a PM on the Endpoint Manager team. And with me, I have my good friend Clay Taylor, and Zero Trust expert, who also works on the Endpoint Manager PM team. So Zero Trust has got the IT industry abuzz at the moment, and with good cause. And from your point of view, it affects every part of the IT discipline within your organization, from identity to network and security, and of course, the Endpoint Manager team. But you as the Endpoint Manager admin have the most important part to play, in my opinion. No matter what the security controls you put in place and how lockdown, identity, and so forth are, if your devices are accessing corp resources or on a misconfigured or unhealthy device, the gates are wide open. The aim of this session is to give you some pointers on how your Endpoint Manager teams can get into the Zero Trust mindset.
Thanks for the intro. As Matt said, I'm Clay Taylor.
Okay, so switching across to agenda, we've got a ton of content for you guys today, so I'll keep it short. Two main sections to this session today. What is Zero Trust and why should we care? In that section, Clay is going to give us all a baseline on what Zero Trust is, and then we're going to move over to Zero Trust considerations for device management. We've got 6 key areas that you as Endpoint Manager admins need to focus on becoming Zero Trust minded.
Let's get started with some basics. Just a few years ago, your entire IT network was inside the network perimeter, and network security was all we needed at the time. But then the cloud enabled us to really transform how we do things. Now, our user population spans across employees, partners, and contractors, and they are all bringing their own devices. We now store sensitive data in cloud services and have connected devices deployed in our supply chains, fields, factories, and buildings. We even share users, devices, apps, and data with our partners and vendors. Our corporate footprint looks a lot different than it did 20 years ago, which is why we needed to rethink how we approach security. As we've moved to the cloud at Microsoft, we've also had to adjust our principles. We've moved from trust but verify to verify explicitly. We always want to authenticate and authorize based on all available data points, including user identity, location, device health, service or workload, data classification, and anomalies. We're still sticking with the premise of using least privilege access. We want to limit our users' access with just in time and just enough access to protect both data and productivity. Finally, instead of a reactive approach, we're assuming breach. We want to minimize the blast radius for breaches and employ security strategy to prevent lateral movement. At Microsoft, we divided our Zero Trust story into 6 different control planes: identity, devices, applications, data, infrastructure, and network. You can tell that Microsoft has really embraced the concept of Zero Trust when you look at the Microsoft 365 product offering, which covers almost every aspect of your Zero Trust strategy. Now we're going to switch back over to Matt to go through Zero Trust considerations for device management.
Thanks, Clay. So we've come up with 6 main considerations for Zero Trust when it comes to device management. And the first one is that our devices are registered and managed from the cloud. When we're reliant on on-prem infrastructure to do authentication and device configuration, we're really reliant on the devices being on-prem, and we don't want to do that with our Zero Trust mindset. The second thing we want to look at is making sure our on-prem GPO and configuration is available in the cloud. Just because we have cloud-born and cloud-connected devices doesn't mean we want to compromise on the security configuration for those endpoints. The next thing we want to consider is conditional access. And conditional access is where we're only granting access to cloud-managed and compliant devices and apps. The fourth thing is device risk. We want to make sure that any risky device is blocked as part of that conditional access control and never granted access to our corporate data. When data is granted, we want to make sure that it's protected and stored in place, and that it can't be leaked outside of the organization. And then finally, we want to make sure our devices are kept up to date. Patching and updates is super important when devices aren't within that traditional network boundary and being locked down. So our next 6 sections cover all 6 of these points. First, we're going to talk about modern management. Then we're going to talk about security configuration when those devices are modern managed. Third, we're going to move across to our conditional access controls and incorporating our device risk into that gate. And then finally, we're going to talk about endpoint DLP and patching and updates. Now I'm going to hand over to Clay to talk about modern management.
Great, Matt. As most of you know, Microsoft has been recognized as a leader in the Magic Quadrant for many years now. And that's because we've enabled our customers on their journey to modern management. Many of you are starting with significant, complex existing on-premise infrastructure. For you, the first step would be to connect your configuration manager site to Intune for instant cloud value. This is also called tenant attach. Others are still primarily on-premise with some cloud management. For you, you'll be able to enroll your config manager devices into Intune using co-management. For those who already have a large existing cloud management infrastructure, you're going to be able to move additional endpoints and workloads to cloud management easily. Finally, for those with limited or no existing management tools today, or for those who are already primarily in the cloud, you can go directly to the cloud management with Microsoft Intune. Now, I want to go through and show you a couple of different ways that I've seen our customers move to this zero trust mindset. The first is by completely separating out your corporate environment from your zero trust environment. This means using things like app protection policies, Defender ATP, Intune, Azure Active Directory, and Azure Identity Protection to protect your data in the cloud, but allowing a small number of extremely locked down devices to stay on your corporate network. An alternative approach is to use Config Manager Cloud Management Gateway, or CMG, to provide remote users access to on-prem resources without the use of a traditional VPN. This is being used by several customers to bring the benefits of zero trust to the existing workforce while they add new devices and mobile users directly to the zero trust environment. Using log analytics and Sentinel, they also get deep visibility into both on-prem and cloud activity to make sure the risk conditions are controlled. Now, I'm going to hand over to Matt to talk about security configuration management.
So now that we've got our devices modded, managed, and available from a cloud management console, we need to consider the security configuration management. Just because these devices are cloud managed doesn't mean we want to compromise on device configuration and security. Microsoft do things a little different when it comes to unified endpoint security management. Unlike many of our competitors, all of our functionality is directly built into Windows. This means we can provide rich management experiences for things like antivirus, firewall, DLP, and threat and vulnerability management without any extra agents slowing down the client. It also means that we can feed all of this rich security configuration options into Microsoft best practice guidances. We call this our Microsoft security baselines, and it's a really great place to start for a lot of organizations to getting those cloud-born and cloud-managed devices secure and up to Microsoft recommended configuration. Now I'm going to switch over to a demo of the endpoint security management node in the Microsoft Endpoint Manager console. So as I mentioned, we wanted to provide the best possible SEC admin experience in their Endpoint Manager console. And to do that, we've created a dedicated endpoint security node in our left nav. The new endpoint security node has a mixture of quite a fast start style management with security baselines and security tasks, as well as quite granular options for managing things like antivirus and disk encryption. Let's start with the security baseline though. Security baseline is a set of over 200 settings in our Windows 10 security baseline that are pre-configured based on Microsoft best practice recommendations. If I select this Contoso default security baseline, you'll see what I mean. Selecting properties and then editing this policy will list out all of the settings that are predefined and pre-configured in the security baseline profile. As you can see here, there's lots and lots of settings. If we select firewall, for example, a lot of the settings available are pre-configured. You'll see things like inbound connections are being blocked. You'll see that all of the different profiles enabled, and things like policy policy rules from group policies are not being merged. So this is a pretty good way to start your security configuration, but we know that there's a need for much granular controls as well. So in the example of firewall, perhaps we have a subset of devices that need very specific configuration, such as allowing an application or a port to be open. If I come across my firewall node here, you'll see that we've built out an experience where you can create both firewall policies and firewall rule policies. I've pre-created a firewall rule that's going to allow SSH on my developer machines. If I open that up, you'll see all of the options that we have available. You can see that there's just one firewall rule in this policy, and when I edit it, you have lots and lots of options to configure that particular port and protocol. Here's my port range. Every option in the left nav down here has got a huge breadth of options and settings, and all come with their own reporting experiences as well. As we've just seen, there's a huge amount of options to do when it comes to device configuration, which is awesome. A configured device is a secured device, but we also want to extend that configuration to proactively allow and restrict access to corporate data if the device does not meet this criteria. This is where conditional access and device risk comes in. So I've put together a really simple illustration of what conditional access is. Every organization has something that they cares about, and it's most likely some sort of data that they want to protect. And the traditional model is we would put some sort of gate or fence around that data. And if somebody was coming from the outside attempting to access that data, we would block it. But if that same person was inside that boundary, they would get unfettered access to that data. So conditional access is different. Rather than just trusting the device because it's behind our corporate firewall, we want to not trust them by default and actually verify the posture of the user and the device before access is granted. So when the user attempts to access that's something that your organization cares about, we go through a whole bunch of posture checks. The first thing that we want to do is look at the user identity posture. Is this user the user who they really say they are? Should we be prompting for an MFA? The second thing we want to do is look at the user and the device's location. Are they attempting to access your corporate data from a dodgy location? Are they routing via proxies and so forth? Then we want to have a look at the user's client app that they're presenting. Are they using a trusted app? And then finally, we want to have a look at the device posture. Is the device that they're presenting configured and healthy? So some of the things we might want to check is the platform and management type, the device's patch level, is it up to date? Is the device configured correctly? Is the device encrypted? Has it got a passcode? Is the device jailbroken? Can we look at some sort of external device health attestation? And then finally, is the device and user risky? Is there any chance that they've got malicious apps or networks or vulnerabilities on the client? In this example, the device risk has failed, and therefore we're not allowing the device and the user access to that something your organization cares about. Now I want to switch across to a demo where we show you how conditional access can automatically block access to a risky device. So if I come back to my endpoint security console and go into my device compliance, we want to see the policy that's blocking this user because they're on a risky PC. You can see I have a policy here called block risky PCs. And in my properties, you'll see that the compliance requirement is that the device needs to be under the low machine risk score or below. And if I come across to my SecOps console in the Defender Security Center, you can see that this device name, Bad Guy VM, is actually at a medium risk level. This gives the visibility of my SecOps team into what's going on the device, and they can go off and remediate them. You can see here that there's a bunch of active alerts on this client, including a bunch of malware that's been detected and some that have been remediated. Now the SecOps team can go off and clean up this machine and make sure that it meets the compliance requirements and email access will be granted. So the user of this PC has been doing some really naughty things. They've gone and downloaded a whole bunch of third-party applications that happen to be riddled with malware and spyware. Now most SecOps teams would receive notifications and so forth via the Defender ATP Windows Security Center. But we also want to be proactive, and we want to make sure that the user is blocked from email access and SharePoint and so forth, so that there's no chance of them spreading it any further. So I'm going to open up my email here in Edge, and you'll see conditional access kicking in, blocking access. I'm going to sign in as Demi. And of course, conditional access is blocking us. Now, if the user wants to understand more about what's going on and what they've done wrong, they can open up their company portal app and view the device compliance status. When I scroll to my devices here, you can see my bad guy VM, which is a surprise, surprise, non-compliant. And you can see that Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection has found a threat. Now, usually a SecOps person would reach out to this user, or the user can clean up their PC themselves. But once the risk level has been brought down below the acceptable threshold, then email access will be automatically re-granted. So now that the risk has been mitigated on the client, we've checked the user identity posture, the location, the client apps, and we know that the device is healthy. The gate is now open and that user can access the corporate data. But it doesn't stop here. As we have this conditional access gate in place, we continuously verify all of this posture, and whenever any of it fails, we automatically block access to that corporate data. So just on device risk, the example that I gave was using Microsoft Defender ATP for Windows 10 device risk into conditional access, but we also support a handful of mobile threat defense partners for iOS and Android as well. Also look out for announcements around Microsoft Defender ATP for mobile.
Thanks, Matt. You've heard us talk many times before about mobile application management and Intune app protection policies, but with Zero Trust, it becomes an even more important piece to the puzzle. To ensure your data remains safe or contained in a managed app, create app protection policies. A policy can be a rule that is enforced when the user attempts to access or move corporate data, or a set of actions that are prohibited or monitored when the user is inside of the app. The data protection framework, which we encourage you to utilize, is organized into 3 distinct configuration levels, with each building off the previous level. The first is Enterprise Basic Data Protection, or Level 1. This ensures that apps are protected with a PIN, the app is encrypted, and it also allows selective wipe operations. The second is Enterprise Enhanced Data Protection. This introduces app protection DLP mechanisms and minimum OS requirements. Finally, Enhanced High Data Protection introduces advanced data protection mechanisms like advanced PIN configuration and app protection mobile threat defense, allowing you to block users from launching a protected app if the device is found to be at risk. Intune is actively working directly with the Office team to define our app protection strategy. Intune's the only mobility management solution that can control Office with this much granular control without compromising the end user experience. I do want to make one big call out for app protection policies that is fairly new and something that you should definitely consider as part of your Zero Trust strategy. If you have never read the third-party keyboard end user license agreement for iOS devices, you probably should. You can get to it by going to Settings, General, Keyboard, and clicking About Third-Party Keyboards on your iOS device. If you read the first paragraph, you'll see that these keyboards can access all of the data you type, including bank account and credit card numbers, street addresses, as well as other personal and sensitive information. These keyboards may also access nearby text or data, which is useful for improving autocorrect functionality. If you continue reading the second paragraph, you'll see that if you disable the full access for a third-party keyboard and then re-enable it, the keyboard's developer may be able to access, collect, and transmit what was typed while the network access was disabled. This means that it can even access data that is cached while the keyboard is turned off. Luckily, we've added the ability to disable third-party keyboard access for both iOS or Android in Intune app protection policies. Now, let's look at how to protect your data on devices that are running Windows instead of iOS or Android. In the past, many customers have given us feedback that data protection on Windows is a real pain for many different reasons. Some of those include IT overhead or friction, such as requirements for on-prem infrastructure, or that it's difficult to manage because you can't protect what you can't see. These policies are also complex to manage. Finally, because it requires such a heavy-handed approach to be able to truly lock down data, the effectiveness of any solution is often called into question, due to the fact that in some cases, it even makes working harder for your end users. So you have probably heard of our new endpoint DLP solution. So I want to quickly walk you through how it ties into your Zero Trust device strategy. First, Endpoint DLP is built into Windows 10, Office apps, and Edge with no agent required. Second, it offers seamless deployment via the cloud with very easy to understand configuration options. This leads to immediate value and immediate return on your investment. Finally, it has out-of-the-box integration with other Microsoft products like Microsoft Information Protection, which allows you to build on your existing capabilities and focus on risks that matter. The first thing you notice with Endpoint DLP is the quick time to value. On day one, you'll be able to discover sensitive data on devices using audit activity of common file types with rich context, data classification without any policy, and data-driven policy orchestration. It's also integrated with Microsoft Information Protection, so you can manage it through Microsoft Compliance Center, and a single click extends existing DLP policies to devices. The Endpoint DLP solution is cloud native with no on-prem infrastructure required. It also includes out-of-the-box analytics, so no policy is needed. We also offer a tailored experience for policy creation driven by insights from analytics. Configuring policies across devices, apps, and services in the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center is easier than ever, with rich flexibility in configuring rules and enforcement actions. Microsoft's Endpoint DLP can be accessed via the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center, and I'm going to show you a quick demo now so you can see just how easy it is. From the Compliance Center, choose Data Loss Prevention. Then I'm going to choose Create Policy, which will give me the option to use a template or create a custom policy. You'll see that I have the option to choose from many different template types, which are targeted towards specific financial, medical, or privacy-related data. For this demo, I'm going to choose US financial data. The template already has a name and description, so I'm going to choose Next. Since we are talking about the device's Zero Trust control plane today, I'm going to exempt all storage locations except devices on this screen. Now, I'm going to set up some advanced DLP rules to add some specific criteria to my policy that meets the requirements of my compliance department. These requirements include blocking the ability to copy data to a network share, block access by unallowed apps, and block the ability for end users to print supported files, but give them the option to override the print block if they have provided a business justification. Now, I'm going to go back and set a few more options. That setting was specifically to trigger if a low volume of financial data was detected on a device. Next, I'm going to set the same settings for when a large volume of financial data is detected on the device. The instant count can be set manually for both low and high volumes of data, and you can always add to the default sensitive information types, which are credit card, bank account, or bank routing numbers. Since this rule is for high volumes of data, I'm going to make it a little more restrictive. Once you have finished, you will have the option to test your policy or turn it on right away. And then you'll just need to save your DLP policy to apply it to your end user devices. Now, when a user tries to save the sensitive document to a network location, they'll get a pop-up stating that the action is blocked. Next, the user might try to attach the document to a non-approved email client, at which point that action will be blocked as well. From big events to day-to-day activities that keep workplaces running, we've observed a major shift in how and where work happens in the past 6 months. It's suddenly become critical for teams around the world to move to hybrid or fully remote work habits in service of public health. Keeping devices protected and productive enables essential work to happen remotely where possible, but the crisis has made it extra hard to keep devices in that state since on-prem deployments of the latest monthly updates are no longer a viable option. Cloud updates can help remotely manage and monitor these deployments so that they complete with minimally disruptive update and post-update experiences, meaning work can keep happening for everyone everywhere. But we know every organization is starting from a unique place and has unique requirements for how updates happen. It can feel daunting and isolating to get from where you are today to a deployment strategy that works for a geographically distributed workforce. Today, we'll talk through some of the options for easily moving cloud updates into your monthly deployment strategy without compromising your unique goals that you can take with you to try today. Let's start by talking through the different components of a deployment strategy. These break down into 3 areas, each of which corresponds to requirements and new challenges you might have for executing a deployment. The first is distribution. How do you want your devices to get their updates? How do you make sure updates are flowing while devices are not in the office? The compliance area addresses requirements that devices get critical quality updates in the right time frame. And feature update scheduling allows you to plan for minimally disruptive feature updates so that your organization can stay on supported versions of Windows 10 and keep getting the monthly service releases you need. In the world of remote work, these areas need to be configurable and trustworthy so your geographically distributed organization takes the right updates at the right time without degrading device experiences. We want you to be able to find success no matter where you're starting from. When starting your Zero Trust journey, you might be using WSUS or ConfigMan to plan, execute, and monitor your deployments. So the next step for you might be enabling updates to non-CorpNet connected devices using Cloud Management Gateway, or setting up baseline security group policy to point devices directly at Windows Update. From there, you can move to monthly update deployments using co-management on your journey to using Intune to fully manage your updates in the cloud. Given the reality of remote work, we'll be focusing on cloud delivery through Intune in the next few slides. To get started with Windows Update and Microsoft Endpoint Manager, select Devices, Windows, then Windows 10 Update Rings, and create your first update ring. You can then fine-tune the settings with very granular controls, including maintenance windows, allowing a user to uninstall the updates for a defined number of days in case of compatibility issues, or even set reminders for the user to give them the option to wait for a few hours before the update is automatically installed. Next, we're going to set Windows 10 feature update policy in Intune to bring devices to the Windows version you specify, for example, 1803 or 1809, and freeze that specific feature set on those devices until you choose to update them to a later Windows version. To do this, select Devices, Windows, Windows 10 Feature Updates, and Create. Finally, I'm going to create an update policy for iOS by going to Devices, Update Policies for iOS or iPadOS, and Create Profile. You're then going to select the version to install. You can choose from Latest Update, which deploys the most recent released update for iOS or iPadOS, or any previous version that is available in the drop-down box. If you select a previous version, you must also deploy a device configuration policy to delay visibility of software updates. Finally, you can set a maintenance window so that these updates are only deployed at a specified time.
So we've covered a lot of stuff today, and we hope that you found it useful. And just to summarize the 6 pillars that we've discussed, number one, most important thing to start out is getting your devices modern managed. We need that cloud management to unlock all of the zero trust scenarios. Number two, get those devices configured and secured. Number 3 and 4, lock down that corporate data access based on device risk. And finally, we want to ensure that our corporate data is secure on the device and that our devices are up to date.
Wherever you are in your Zero Trust cloud management journey, whether you're still thinking about your move to Intune, you've already started with co-management, or you are completely in the cloud, use Microsoft Endpoint Manager. It truly is your hub to unify security, apps, access, compliance, and end-user experience across your entire technology estate. And because of these signals and this intelligence, it delivers analytics and data to keep you ahead of change so you can keep costs down and keep your organization running smoothly, whatever the future brings. And we believe partners are key to success, and Endpoint Manager is the integration point for the ecosystem.
So this session has really covered a very small piece of the Microsoft Zero Trust strategy, specifically looking at the endpoint side. There's heaps of content available to talk about identity, networks, and apps. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.